Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your attendance here, and I appreciate your commitment to excellent supportive care. As we've said before in other series, in this series, that good quality support, good quality ancillary care really make the cancer experience and the cancer journey as good as it can possibly be. So we have a real treat tonight. We have a wonderful, interesting patient panel with a lot of different experiences and a lot of really inspiring words of wisdom. This is to provide you guys with some extra knowledge and a boost of confidence as you go about your own journeys. We also have a fantastic session on caregiving, which is it's an often neglected series when discussing cancer care, but our caregivers are pivotal people in our cancer experience, and we can provide you guys with some tips on how to make that experience as good as possible. And last but not least, and very importantly, we have a very interesting session on nutrition. Our own nutritionist, Kate Donnellan, will be providing tips on how to make eating and staying healthy and maintaining your weight a lot easier during this process. I would like to go ahead to our patient panel. We have Miss Bernadette, Miss Darlene, and Miss Sarah, who will be providing information to us as we move forward. So, would you guys like to say a word of introduction about yourselves? And I would like every panelist, including Antoinette and Peter and Kate, to tell us all their favorite ice cream flavor. As summer is ending, let's try to keep a little bit of joy in there. Bernadette, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Bernadette, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer, originally triple negative, and then was confirmed to be hormone negative, HER2 positive, back in March of 2021. So about a year into the pandemic, and went through 2 rounds of chemo, including radiation, including being part of a clinical trial, and have now been 4 years, right, since diagnosis, with no evidence of disease. I think that's the correct way to frame it. But I'm happy to be here and really honored to be on this panel with some of the others who've gone through this journey.
Darlene, tell us about yourself.
Okay, my name is my name is Darlene, and I was diagnosed with leukemia in 1999. I'm a retired massage therapist. Since I retired, I became a writer, and I'm also a chaplain. And I enjoy everything that I do, and I'm very excited about being alive and eating right and taking walks and just loving life. That was a scary experience, but as you can see, 99 till now, do, being on the right diet and being obedient, I'm still here with everyone. So I'm excited about sharing anything that I can possibly share to bring positive energy to folks.
Excellent. Thank you. And what's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Let's see. I would say strawberry.
A good classic. Always a winner. Sarah, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I am Sarah. My favorite ice cream is Cherry Garcia. I love those cherries in it. And my cancer story is 2014, diagnosed with HR2 positive, highly invasive, breast cancer, HR2 positive, highly invasive, ER positive, PR negative. I've had over 160 rounds of chemo, currently on a break, which I am thoroughly enjoying by eating Cherry Garcia ice cream and a lot of travel.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'm going to ask you guys all this next question. What two things during your cancer experience gave you the most peace?
What gave me the most peace was the love from others and me meditating. I must say, meditating really brought me through because sometimes it was scary because I was in the hospital for 68 days and I had chemo poured down me 24/7. But when I got scared, I prayed and I meditated. And when I came out of meditation, it was so comforting to me. What I was going through wasn't so bad.
Fantastic. You could provide a whole segment on that and how you handle that in the hospital. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yes.
Bernadette, Sarah?
I love what you said, Darlene. And I think spending time with others. So I know everyone's going to go through this journey in different ways. You can have the exact same diagnosis, the exact same treatment plans, and still, everyone's going to have a unique response. For me, I was very open about what I was going through because I didn't want to be repeating it all the time, everywhere I went. And especially when I was losing my hair and things, I just wanted people to know what I was going through. And so I was very open about it. Um, and being able to see people, spend time with my family, but also friends, people I hadn't seen in years, reaching out. I loved connecting with people, and that gave me a lot of um, strength, right? A lot of life at a time when you're really that's an uncertainty.
Do you have a specific suggestion on how to get together with people?
Since I was sick during the pandemic, I took a lot of walks because it was trying to do things safely outdoors with people at a distance. So I think I think one of my superpowers is taking naps. Everyone kept saying sleep is the best medicine, so I did a lot of that, but I also took a lot of walks. So, and it didn't have to be complicated. It didn't have to be going through, Tilden Park. It could just literally be walking twice around my neighborhood, or in someone else's neighborhood. So just consistently trying every day to connect with people and also go on walks. So that's what really helped me both stay active and connected.
Wonderful, wonderful. Darlene, to get back to you for a moment, where do you meditate and how do you find support for meditation?
Oh, well, because I was in the, are you speaking of when I was in the hospital with the leukemia, or where do I find time, period? Is that what you're asking?
Both, particularly during the cancer experience. How did
Okay.
you find the resources and the right environment for meditation?
Okay, with me being in the hospital 68 days, I'm used to when the pandemic came in, I'm used to having masks on all the time.
Mm.
But during that time when I would go down when the chemo affects me, I would just stop when I start crying because I couldn't cry either because I had to swallow and my throat was raw.
Mm.
So the only thing that I possibly could do was talk to my higher being that lives inside me. And I did. Wherever I was, if I was sitting in a chair or in the bed, I would just close my eyes and ask for a healing. And I knew that there was a spirit inside me that listened to me. And let's put it this way, they did not think that I was going to make it, but my faith and my meditation kept giving me strength. So in the bed or in the chair, every now and then they would let me get up and walk around due to our cells, you know, with the chemo wiping us out. They didn't want me up about too much because if I bump or cut myself in some form or fashion, um, I didn't have platelets. So I had to be careful. So to make a long story short with you, meditation was very easy for me. I could sit in the bed and just go within myself and talk to my higher being.
Sarah, what about you?
Let's see. The first thing that brought me the most comfort was probably accepting that the body fails. That I didn't do anything to provoke it or bring it on. The next thing is I traveled a lot. Like I would go to treatment with my bags packed, and I would get on a plane and fly somewhere, national or internationally. And oftentimes I would come back 3 weeks later with that same suitcase, sit back down in the chair, um, just to be ready to continue to do the chemo. One other thing, music was instrumental for helping with the pain. And then once I finally realized I didn't have to suffer through the side effects, like tell the doctors, tell the nurses, take the extra medicine so that you're not miserable.
Very good, very good. And we do have data, everybody, that music does help with many of the quality of life side effects and other complications of chemotherapy. So, did you play music, Sarah, or did you listen to music or both?
Listen to it. Nobody wants me to play music.
Oh, I don't
It
know
would
about
hurt my own ears.
Do you find a particular kind more soothing? One would think
Oh,
it
it
would
was
go.
crazy. Like anything from Shaggy to Mozart, um, Hauser, just it didn't matter. Just
Wonderful,
something to get me out of thinking about the pain and
wonderful,
the loss. Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful. Now, I'd like you guys to talk about key features of good caregiving, meaning care that was provided to you when you were the patient during your cancer therapy. So think about two key features. And did you notice anything in particular seem to make the process easier for your loved ones? So, what was good in terms of caregiving? And then what made things easier for your caregivers?
First thing I did with my caregivers was I let a lot of people off the hook, like people who weren't going to help me heal, that really felt obligated to. I was like, you know what? I'll just contact you guys when I'm done with chemo. Like, I'll send you notes, we can text message, but you don't have to go out of your way to be uncomfortable. Um, Another thing, I made spreadsheets on who to call for what. Because when you're in heavy chemo, you don't really have a lot of brain control. And you reach out to someone and you ask them to do something that they can't do, whether it's a physical or a mental thing. So a spreadsheet was excellent.
Very good, very good. Pretty brave to also decide who you're going to let go, too. But I think it's the right thing because we don't want negative energy during this time, right? We want positive people around us, and there's nothing wrong with letting go something that's not helping you. So, Bernadette or Darlene, what do you guys think?
I think there's just a narrative that is in the media and just kind of in stories that get told about how cancer is something that people are afraid to talk about. They're afraid to ask you how you're doing. They don't want to make you feel bad. Just they're just uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable with cancer. They're uncomfortable with possibility of death, even though we're all on this journey towards death. Um, and so I think when Sarah said letting people off the hook, I also just would kind of, I know it's probably hard to know about what to talk about, but what I want to talk about is how are you doing, right? Just like everything's normal. I didn't want that being kind of the barrier by which people had to, talk with me. So I just acknowledge that. My kids were one was in eighth grade and finishing eighth grade. The other one was finishing her sophomore year, junior year, and in high school. And so I think just being honest too, like my eighth grader, in terms of, my kids helped me shave my head when I was losing my hair. I tried to just make it seem all matter of fact. And when my husband and I told him about my diagnosis, his first question was, "Are you going to die?" Which is an
Wow.
important question you should be able to ask. And I was just really honest with him. So I think being honest, being open to the questions, asking for questions, welcoming them, I think really helped the people around me know that, and I wasn't trying to be positive, relentlessly positive. It was just being honest, I think was the most important thing. And saying I had a lot of trust in my caregivers.
Mhm.
Um, and that's what I was going to focus on instead of, you know, and so that's how I answered the question. I didn't plan on dying from this, but you never know. But I trust my caregivers and I'm going to do everything I can.
Very good, very good. Darlene, what about you?
Oh, let's see. I must say, with me being in the hospital for the 68 days, I had a wonderful experience with the doctors there with me. Um, I had a lot of faith, and I did not want anybody to come see me saying, when they see me, especially when I had to shave my hair because my hair was falling out, I would let people know, now, when you come see me, now don't get shocked or go, oh, poor Darlene. I want you to be positive because I want to get through this and I don't want anyone around me sad. And the truth of the matter, I'm very comical. So I made a lot of people laugh, those that could come and see me, because I had good days and bad days. For a while, more bad days than good days. But when I was open to see people, I chose the ones that I wanted that had good energy and I know that prayed and loved me. And when I came home, I had a wonderful male nurse, and we just had a ball enjoying each other's company and him taking care of me. So I could say I had really good, loving people around me. Again, it makes a huge difference when you have love around you, and you must stay positive. If you want to live, I mean, God is in control, but you are as well. And I'm a very positive person. And I believe that's what got me through was my meditation and me being positive about life. And people would always say, God, darling, we're here to cheer you up, but you making us laugh. But
Mhm.
it's joy. And Sarah, I'm with you with music. I played a lot of R&Bs and jazz when I was in. I had my little headset on, and oh, I would wiggle my feet and hands and everything. It just brought me joy. So I thank you for mentioning that because music was a big part of my survival.
Sarah, go ahead, dear.
Part of it was them knowing when to leave
Yeah.
without me saying it's time for you to go, because you can be so direct when you're in chemo that it's like, all right, I've had enough. It's time to go. But
Yeah.
like an agreed upon, I can only have you here for a half hour.
That's good.
Please
Yeah.
don't bring food and please don't wear perfume.
Yes.
Yes.
Boundaries.
Yeah.
Yes.
And being upfront, everyone appreciates you being upfront right away.
Bernadette,
Yep.
so talk to us about joy. Joy is an important thing to you. I've heard you mention in the past.
I think joy is important. Absolutely. And I think everyone's responses around what gives us peace possibly also gives us joy. I like to answer the question, like, what gives you life? What gives me life?
Mhm.
And that's been an interesting reframing for me. It's because joy can sometimes feel fleeting in the way I think about it. And it's kind of hard to imagine being in a constant state of joy. It's mostly like moments. And so the joy of like being able to eat something I really, like, and it doesn't taste really different, or listening to music. I listened to some hard rock actually, which I never was kind of a rocker before, but I was like, this feels really good to just kind of be feeling the heavy beats. But
You are.
it gives me life like that. And that a lot of, just taking one day at a time when it comes to the treatment, when it comes to how you're feeling, um, gives me life in terms of being able to be clear. I love boundaries now. before. I think I found it really hard to express preferences or I felt bad saying no. Now I'm so good. And I think it gives people clarity too, because they appreciate that.
Absolutely. Sometimes people just want to be told what to do. It's a scary situation on both sides.
That's right.
Now, for each of you, what was your go to recipe for nutrition, for maintaining enough calories during cancer therapy? We all know that one of the biggest things is we don't want to eat. When we're on chemo, food can taste weird, food can taste metallic y. What did you, the three of you personally, do to make sure you maintained enough calories?
I had to go to a nutrition class. Believe it or not, it was 4 hours and I learned a lot. I learned I wasn't an organic girl, but after having leukemia and surviving this uh, and going to that class, I learned so much about what I should eat, what I should not eat. Um, and I asked a lot of questions. Why not that? Because I love that, but they explained it to me good. Um, what else? Uh, Due to me having leukemia, as you guys mentioned earlier about perfumes and cologne, can't be around any perfumes or colognes or really any kind of strong chemicals, oils or different things. But I enjoy now being an organic girl. I have to watch everything that I eat and it must be organic. And they explained to me about organic and why it's important to not have uh, anything other than organic food. So that's mine. I learned a lot how to take care of myself. Uh, and it's one I'm still learning today how to take care of myself. And I must say, it brings me much joy. I guess I love learning. Knowledge and wisdom is very important to me. And learning how to take care of myself for as eating is some people struggle with it, but I don't. I learn something every day.
Did you have a go to recipe? Like some people like a mix of three or four things and they eat that twice a day without fail. Did you have a favorite that you liked that helped you get through?
Yeah, well, I learned that about inflammation in the body. So I drink this wonderful tea I make up every, well, I make it up once a week, but it's with lemon, no, with lime and ginger, cinnamon, and green tea. And it's just so refreshing. So I have to have that every day and at least twice a day. I take it in the morning and in the evening, but sometime in the middle of the day, I may even have something. It's just really refreshing and it has helped me get rid of inflammation. So that's my go to, my tea.
Mm.
Good. Sarah, what about you? What about some go to nutrition tips?
So I couldn't keep a lot of things in my body. So I found dark chocolate, definitely stayed, avocados, hard boiled eggs, and coffee. I basically lived on that for 6 years. And occasionally I would go out for a really good, high quality steak, probably once a month.
Good girl.
Then it was only about 3 ounces.
But it was something.
It was something. And I couldn't have too much fiber because I had diarrhea, unbelievable diarrhea for 6 years.
Right.
So any extra fiber was disastrous. But I'm big fan of dark chocolate chips,
Mm.
just so you can have one or
Yeah.
two at a time. Um,
Good,
I
good.
still do it.
That's okay. We're all entitled to our dark chocolate. And I think the key is really finding what works and being comfortable with what works. And what you both alluded to is a good mix of foods and products. And we'll hear more from Kate later, but it's really what works with your body and what gives you comfort and makes you feel full. Bernadette, what about you?
Yeah, I think again, kind of day to day, didn't know how I'd be feeling. Because I didn't have like a constant source of chemo, for example, for one of my treatments. So it was kind of the rounds every 3 weeks. So day to day, I'd kind of think about what haven't I had recently? Fruits, vegetables, proteins, and a smoothie was my favorite way to kind of make sure I was at least getting nutrients even if I didn't feel like eating very much. So it might be bananas and berries and throwing in kale and carrots and spinach and maybe putting some nut milk in there or throwing a handful of almonds just and then somehow having it all blended up made it easier. And having it be cold, I appreciated too. Um, so that to me was a way I felt like I was trying to be a little bit healthy and also making sure I was full. I was vegetarian before starting treatment, and I ended up giving that up because I did end up craving protein. So I ended up eating chicken and beef, for example. Um, so I could get beyond the tofu, beans, nuts, and yogurt. So that was interesting, right? But again, kind of listening to my body and not trying to fight that, like listening to and literally feeding it what I wanted to eat.
Good. Yeah, key message here. You guys all touched upon what makes you feel good, what makes you feel motivated, and again, helps you feel satisfied. And just a piece of advice to our listeners too, when talking about temperatures and certain food products, remember to go over this with your oncologist and make sure it's compatible with your treatment as well. Now, what would you guys say were your biggest takeaways from your cancer experience? Now that you guys have you've gone through it, what were the biggest things that you guys can look back and say, wow, I didn't know this before. I know it now. And this has been a life changer for me. What are a couple of things from each of you that you guys would like to share with our audience?
I really learned to put myself first. Like, not to be narcissistic about it, but I had to be well rested and well fed before I could do anything. Otherwise, I would be very bad company.
Absolutely. Bernadette, what about you?
Yeah, I'd love to build on that. So, Sarah, the idea of like caring for yourself is not a selfish act
Mhm.
and it's not self-indulgent. I think, there's an Audre Lorde quote around caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it's an act of self-preservation. And there's kind of the rest of the quote, but the idea that especially as a woman of color, a child of immigrants, just a mom, just I've used to edit and silence myself a lot because I didn't want to take up too much space and things like that. And I think flipping that, like putting your oxygen mask on first, because if you don't, you can't help anybody else. Not scheduling my appointments last because I actually need to take care of myself. So I give permission to everybody in this webinar who's going through this, give you permission to care for yourself first. Because it's if you don't, you're not going to be strong enough to carry on. And that to me was a big flip in terms of perspective. And the other thing I would say is when I received a second opinion for my initial treatment, a very august, impressive doctor said, "Make sure you complain about everything." And I said, "What?" Complain about everything. But the main idea is that if you don't say what you're experiencing, people can't help you with it. So whether it's numbness in your fingers, pain in your feet, for me, it was real extreme, feeling like extreme fogginess in my thinking, which actually led to getting a brain scan and finding a pituitary tumor, which had nothing to do with the breast tumor, breast cancer, but just complain about everything nicely, be nice about it, be polite and professional about it. But that just gave me a sense of relief and confidence that, yeah, I should speak up about what my experience is so that I could get the help that I needed. And that also, I feel like I've carried on. Just, I have a voice and I want to say things in polite professional ways, but I feel like I want to live as authentically and with my truth as much as possible.
Great. Darlene, what do you think?
I'm with them. I learned to love me more. With me being a massage therapist, being a caretaker for
Mhm.
27 years. Well, at that time, I was probably 9 years in my profession. But I love people and I gave them my all, but I didn't give me as much. But after having leukemia, I fell in love with Darlene.
Mhm.
And
Love that.
and um, another thing that I learned, I felt was be very careful with me having leukemia about your environment. And uh, I moved out of Richmond to El Cerrito because Richmond had a refinery.
Mhm.
And so I started looking at all of my surroundings, and I leukemia made me made me have a sense of a better life because
Mhm.
I moved in a much better neighborhood and away from chemicals and stuff like that. But most of all is I fell in love with Darlene, and I'm falling more
Great.
each day. I say I love you, Darlene. I go in the mirror and I go, I
Right.
love you, Darlene, and what are we gonna do today? So I'm like with Sarah and Bernadette that we have to love ourselves and care more for ourselves. So that's my take in that.
Mhm.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you all. Thank you to Bernadette and Darlene and Sarah for their invaluable insights. And a reminder to our attendees to leave questions in the chat in the Q&A for later. We will have our presentations first and then have our question and answer session. So thank you very much to all three of you. And we will move on now to our caregiving session. We have some published authors who are experts in their fields in caregiving and will provide a lot of helpful tidbits to people. So, Peter Dudley and Antoinette Lacouture, go ahead, please.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Darlene, Bernadette, and Sarah. Really wonderful hearing your story and love your positivity, all of you. I am Peter Dudley, and this is my partner, Antoinette Lacouture. I am an executive coach and business coach, and I do some caregiving coaching and also am an author and writing coach. And
And I am Antoinette. And again, I just want to echo that it was lovely to follow this panel. There's so much of what we're about to talk about is reflected in the stories that we just heard. My background is in corporate philanthropy and employee engagement, but I'm also a direct philanthropy advisor and caregiving coach. My number one hat I wear is as a family caregiver today to an older sister who has Parkinson's.
And we're here because in part of our own caregiving journeys, various, but also our expertise that we bring. And we also published a book on the topic of compassion fatigue, which includes a lot of caregiver stories in it. So I want to get right into the meat of what we're talking about.
We decided to pare down some of the lessons we had from the book into something that might be applicable to this audience today. I think primarily we are used to talking directly to the caregivers, but one thing that I love to remind everyone, I learned from a caregiver of my mother, which is you are your own first caregiver. So much of what we talk about today may apply to you, whether you have family and support in the form of a spouse or friends. But if you are also the person who's primarily caring for yourself as the patient, some of this may be relevant to you as well. So the first idea that we're going to present today is simply the 3 C's of caregiving. And we start with the fact that on one side, the most common reactions that many of us feel as caregivers and care partners is that we want certainty and that we want control, and we are also often critical. But there is an opposite to all of those, which is that uncertainty is remembering to be compassionate. Many of the people on the last panel talked about self-compassion, self-care, but I would also add that as a caregiver, as a care partner, that is your number one job too, to be self-compassionate and care for yourself and everyone else in the situation. And then in terms of control becoming choice, we're going to talk about that in detail, that is a way that you can be in the moment, different than in control. And last, criticism, and addressing this more from a coach mindset as opposed to a controlling and management mindset.
So you may have noticed on the previous slide, we had them labeled as shadow and light, and they're sort of companions, those two columns. And what you want to do is try to stay out of that shadow area, particularly if you're in a caregiving role, and try to get into the light. And this is harder than it sounds. And anybody who's been in a caregiving role knows that. But some things to know are that these shadow behaviors feel productive, but they aren't. You want to have control over the situation, but control can lead to negative behaviors that create constrictingness and lack of creativity and some other things. We all have an inner judge. For some of us, that inner judge has a stronger voice than for others. And the inner judge is reactive. It's not discerning. So you want to be in a place of discernment if you're in a caregiver role, not in a place of judgment. You stay out of that shadow and try to rise to that light as much as possible. Shadow behaviors also lead to self-sabotage. So they feel right in the moment, but in the long run, doing them over and over and over again tend to create negative situations, again, constricting situations. And so it's important when you're in these things to remember that it feels right now, but I have to be discerning and make sure I'm not doing something that's actually doing more damage in the long term. And that's really hard when you're in a caregiving position and your loved one is right there in front of you, and you're drawn to these behaviors. And this is a quote that I can hear in my head every time I read it. So it's and we'll start in on these 3 shifts, and we're going to start with certainty. The one thing that I found, so my primary caregiving story is as a parent of a transgender child who went through serious suicidal depression as a teen. And there's some things there that I wanted, that I just wanted to know for certain. Would she be all right? And would she be in danger from others? Those kinds of things. And when you really strive for certainty, when you don't accept that there is uncertainty and you really just want the one right answer, that can lead to behaviors of getting obsessive and really just going after something again and again and again and not letting it go, and over analyzing, which can lead to paralysis. So when you have a decision to make and you just keep going for more information and more information to try to get that certainty, and second guessing, and not only second guessing your own decisions, but second guessing the people in your circles and your medical professionals and others, and not trusting their decisions and not trusting the people. And then ruminating is that time where you made a mistake and you know it, and you just can't let that go. And then all of this leads to kind of an anxious set of behaviors that really are not productive for anybody.
So what are your choices? The opposite of that. I'm sure there's a lot of you that are right now having that thought. I know for me, the rumination, the second guessing, my caregiving story started primarily with caring for my older mother after a fall. And that led us to the book, and that's sort of the rest of our story. But one of the things that I jumped into that, I was sort of catapulted, quite frankly, and that the rumination, the needing to have all the answers, be the one to solve all the problems, I was absolutely exhausted. And the alternative to that was what I sort of discovered along the way, mostly from talking to other professionals and certainly other people who had been on a journey similar to mine. And one of the most important things was what was alluded to before. We want certainty, but the only thing that's certain is that there is no certainty. And that if you can get to a place of acceptance of that uncertainty, you actually have a lot more capacity to be present, to be less anxious, to be more discerning. And as you'll see in some of the other sections we're going to talk about, it's really where possibility opens up, and you spend less time seeking something that is truly impossible to being present with what is factual and in reality. And that's not about being negative. That I really resonated with Sarah's comment earlier about the idea of knowing that the people she needed to have around her, and that she actually gave people, in a sense, permission to be their best selves for her, which wasn't going to be at every moment, that not every task that needed to be done, and certainly not every part of the process of her disease, was going to be an appropriate place for them. And part of that accepting for me as a caregiver was that I realized that the other people in my immediate family, my siblings and my nieces and nephew, that in order for them to help us, I needed to sort of meet them where they were and let go of them doing it my way. An example I love to give is the fact that I asked my niece one day to go and buy her grandmother some more socks. And she came home with different socks than I might have bought, but it didn't matter. She bought socks. And then she did the best she could. So the key to accepting and trusting and sort of forgiving, it also becomes a much lighter load for you, and you are in less of a mode of management.
So this is the next shadow area, which is control. And I mentioned my child in the last slide, when she was in a suicidal depression. The thing that I learned as a parent is I wanted control over the situation, and all growing up, as she was growing up, I had a lot of control over things that she did and everything. But I learned during that journey that control is a myth. I actually did not have control. And when I was in a mode of striving for control, and it's those of you who are caregivers really take this to heart, because you want to be the champion, you want to be the hero for the person who is suffering, and you just want to give it your all. And that often devolves into control behaviors, and that leads to inflexibility, sometimes being argumentative. Even when the person you're caring for is telling you something, you have a hard time hearing it. You can be very opinionated about things. You strive for certainty, so you learned all the things, and now you have strong opinions over what should be done. And then really leaning into your own knowledge and your own need for control can make you intolerant in righteousness and single-minded. All of these shadow behaviors I mentioned are constricting, and they really reduce your ability to be creative. There's one on here that I was reminded of when our panel was speaking, is a controlling a caregiver feels like they are inserting themselves and adding energy and power into the system so that they are being a benefit. But actually, somebody who is doing that can create a much larger emotional burden on the person being cared for, because then the person being cared for then feels like they have to manage your emotions through the process, as well as their own care. That, as Antoinette mentioned, they're the first caregiver. So
yeah, this is actually one of my favorites, and we've alluded to a lot of the items in this list, the idea about being able to be creative. If you are embracing choice rather than control, accepting the fact that there are things that you have no influence over, but what you do have influence over is how you react to things. So an example would be is a lot of negative information is given, a lot of statistics, a lot of things that are often frame caregiving through a lens of all of the bad things that are going to happen to you and all the things that you must take care of. But the other thing is to look at the stats actually hold out that most people survive it. Most people survive being a caregiver. Most people are not depressed. Most people figure out how to do it. It is extremely difficult. And again, taking a page out of Bernadette's, I think being candid and honest, and maybe it's not with the person you're directly caring for, if they're truly in a battle and they are not well enough to hold your emotions, but find somebody who is. One of the best things that I did was I had a friend who was a nurse, and she was somewhere else dealing with something else in her life, and we would trade advice on just our categories. She would help me with my thing, I would listen to her, and we became that sort of trusted partner. And what it really helped me to do was to be much more discerning about what was truly a crisis and what I could let go. She was also quite inspiring, and she helped me also to be assertive, but in a kind and generous way.
So the third shadow area is criticism. And this, when things are so important and things are not going right, and this is a really hard thing to do, is be a caregiver and watch your loved one go through something that people say they would gladly trade places, and it's just really hard. It can be really easy to criticize everything around you. We end up having these strong emotions, and we want to put them somewhere. We want to place them somewhere. And so often we place them on the people that are just in front of us, and that could be the medical staff or other people at the facilities that you're in, or even family members. Someone you think isn't showing up right in the way they should, you get angry with them. And so criticism shows up in multiple ways, in judgmental behaviors. You can be dismissive of other people's opinions, or sarcastic and patronizing, and blaming. One of the stories that I like to think about when I think about this criticism shadow area is when Antoinette's mom was in the memory care facility. There were days when we would go in to visit her, and there would be kind of a sticky spot of orange juice on the floor. And we could have said, the staff are not doing their job. The staff are not keeping this place really clean. But that doesn't create any positive situation. It just would create barriers and rifts between us and the people who are actively caring for her mom. So we just cleaned it up and went about our way. So that's an example of where criticism can sneak in.
By having more of a coaching mindset instead of that critical mindset, one of the things that I discovered was along the way, I noticed that what the staff was doing, instead of maybe worrying about the orange juice spilled on the floor, was they were taking really good care of the patients. And they had a lot of autonomy, even down to the youngest, newest member of the staff knew that their top order of business was to do whatever a patient needed, first and foremost. And so maybe the furniture was a little worn out, and maybe there was a spot on the floor, but I hadn't put my mom in a hotel. I put my mom into a care facility, and the reality was I was able to sit in a state of gratitude for those people every day because they took excellent care of her. And I know that her last days were safe, and she was whole and in a lot less pain or discomfort than she might have been had I tried to do all the things that they were far more capable of doing. I think the other thing about a coaching mindset over a management mindset that was just really invaluable, I mentioned at the beginning, I'm now on a journey of sort of leading a care team of my nieces and friends of my older sister who has Parkinson's, which is a much longer and different journey. There's only one exit of Parkinson's, but we don't have any idea when that might come. And there is an enormous amount of unknown and uniqueness about it as a disease, not unlike cancer. And one of the things that came out of the care of my mother is that I now am a much more capable coach than I am being the bossy older sister aunt that I might have been to those nieces, helping them to meet the moment and be in this time with their mother. And my other sister is in the mix with us as well. And none of that would have been possible if I had stayed in that sort of critical, controlling, hero mindset that I started out this journey with. So I just want to validate the fact that it's not overnight and it's not all the time, and you will make mistakes. But when you act in grace, both and compassion for yourself, first and foremost, you're far more likely to be able to give compassion and grace to those around you, the professionals, most of all, who need all of our thanks and care because we're all working in an imperfect system on an incredibly difficult time in our lives as humans. And I hope that having that freedom of giving yourself grace and knowing you're doing the best job you can is really what we want to leave you with as a message.
Now we talked about these three shadow and light areas, and strive for the light. in your caregiving. And that is a lot easier said than done, right? So we wanted to give you a couple of things that are practical tips that we talk about in our various workshops. And it's really about resilience. Resilience is not just the ability to endure the unendurable. It's the ability to get up when things go bad and keep going and maybe find a new path. And so we have identified 11 paths to resilience. We can share that if people are interested. But I wanted to give 3 simple exercises for staying centered. Keeping yourself centered through a difficult time is really important. So step 1 is micro meditations throughout the day. We already heard about meditation. And when people think of meditation, they usually think I'm going to sit down and be really, really quiet, calm, and focus on that meditative state for half an hour or maybe longer. And that's a little bit like you're driving down the highway and take your hands off the steering wheel for a while and you're about to run into the guardrails when you finally correct. But if you can do little micro meditations throughout the day, just 10, 15 seconds of getting very in your physical space, that can really help keep you resilient and actually wire your brain for better resilience. Step 2 is keep a success jar. Some of you may have heard of a gratitude jar where you write down things that you're grateful for and you keep them in a jar. And when you're feeling down, you pull one out and look at it and it reminds you of what makes you happy. I think a success jar is equally important because one of the things that we fail to do as humans a lot is look back and see all the great things that we've done and all the things that we showed up for that resulted in something positive or even resulted in a result that wouldn't have happened if we were in the mix. So keep that success jar, and when you're feeling down or you hit a a mistake or a fail point, pull one of those out and really give it some thought. And then a third thing that we do is one of the last things we do before we turn out the light and go to sleep is ask each other what was something that made you grateful today, and that could be, or made you happy today or brought you joy, or just, it doesn't have to be the most important thing. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be that we have peanut butter and chocolate ice cream, which happens to be our favorite ice cream. I forgot to mention it. But whatever it is that made you happy that day or made you grateful that day. And then finally, really, there are lots of resources out there. Mental health professionals, therapists really can help you unpack the deep emotional excavation you need to go through in these kinds of situations. And a professional coach is more on what we've been talking about, which is that move to positive behavior, that future thinking, that how you show up kind of thing. And
I just want to again say to all of you out there who are caregiving, you're doing a great job. You're a wonderful human. You're doing your best. And don't forget to be compassionate to yourself above all else, because that's the best way that you will be available to care for others.
And we have some questions that I wanted to address. The first one is a comment, I think. My husband died at Stanford on May 4th of this year from complications of a stem cell transplant. I'm very sorry to hear that, having done a stem cell transplant year and seeing the direct complications of that firsthand. I hope you are healing okay. And absolutely, sometimes in a hospital setting, the patient may not express what he wants. Yes. Being a caregiver without training makes it difficult to be helpful. Well, that is absolutely true. And the thing is, people are often thrown in this role. There is not a formal training program. This is something that people are forced into, for lack of a better phrase, and it's often an unpleasant situation. So I think direct resources that would be helpful are, number one, truly understand what you're up against in terms of side effects, treatment plans, medical appointments. How much of an investment is this going to be for you as the caregiver and you as the patient? I often tell patients, cancer treatment is a part to full-time job. This is something that changes lives completely, and people don't often have the formal training for it. So I think the biggest step is understand it's going to be a transition, understand that it's going to be a life-changing transition. There aren't resources out there for free for patients who are in this situation, unfortunately. Some patients can apply for assistance in California, state assistance for in order for a family member to be a caregiver, and they can get some funding for that. But this is often a situation where you recruit friends, family, or hired help, making it even harder as a situation overall. So there unfortunately are not organizations or associations that directly provide resources, but rather, I think once somebody is initially diagnosed, the wheels have to turn to provide a plan, to have a plan and a care team in place right away. Who's going to help me? How much is that person going to invest? How am I going to be able to afford this? And we talk about this in some other resources, but I think that's part of the situation here, that this is a very, very challenging time. I don't know, Peter and Antoinette, if you have anything else to add in the cancer space, but it's extremely stressful for patients and their family members, as I've seen.
I can offer that there is actually a fairly robust program for family caregiver education in California, and it is complimentary to anybody. There are 11 centers around the state, and I was part of a national coalition that got paid family leave approved in California. So you can actually be paid to care for a member of your family. It is not just for children. This is actually exactly what it was meant for. So if you're unaware of that, I would ask your HR department if you are currently someone's corporate employee. The other thing is that it is possible to be paid as a family member, as the caregiver. There are some hoops to jump through, but I will share those resources, and I'll also make sure that Linda has that information. I can't emphasize enough, there's actually also a number of national organizations. And I would share one of the best organizations that I got support from was something called Daughterhood. And as a caregiver, what I discovered was it was less about what my person was suffering, because caregivers often get identified as the disease of the person they're caring for. But in truth, there's an incredible amount that you can learn from people in very different situations. And it's really about finding the people who see the world the same way you do. I'm a very action-oriented person. I had trouble with support groups where it was all about commiserating. I needed people who were interested in making things happen.
That is wonderful, Antoinette. If you could provide those resources, that would be very helpful for everybody. So I hope that helped the question asker. Now, it's after dinner. Let's move on to nutrition. And Kate, I know this isn't on your palette of favorite foods probably, but do tell us your favorite ice cream flavor, and let's hear about some nutrition guidance.
We love ice cream, especially in the cancer community, because I think someone mentioned before, cold things are always good. And ice cream has fat and protein, and it goes down easy. So we actually love ice cream, and I can tell you, I just had some really, really delicious coconut ice cream that had chocolate covered pieces of coconut inside it, and it was really good. So that was a favorite recently.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so Antoinette and Peter, wow, what an amazing presentation. I got so much from that, as I'm sure everyone else did. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We'll just jump into this presentation. A lot of information to get through. So today I want you to understand the mental and emotional impact of food, know the 4 main nutrition goals during treatment, be able to explain the importance of weight maintenance during cancer treatment, identify eating strategies that help during treatment, identify what to eat during treatment, understand the potential nutritional side effects, and understand common myths about nutrition and cancer. I think that's a big one. A lot of times when you get a new diagnosis of cancer, suddenly everybody has got a lot of info to share with you, and it seems like a lot of it is about nutrition. So we'll talk about some big ones with that. So nutrition, food is a lot more than just nutrition, right? It's family, culture, energy, comfort, a sense of well-being. So I think a lot of times when people get a new cancer diagnosis, there's this element of shame. And a lot of that tends to be about food, that somehow you've brought this upon yourself, especially in terms of the foods that you're eating. And we all know it's a very complicated equation about who gets cancer and who doesn't, right? We all know someone who did everything right and still got cancer, and someone who did everything wrong and didn't get cancer. So it's not a straight equation of food to cancer. So when we're talking about eating as we go through this cancer journey, we really want to, just respect all of the things that food brings to us, outside of nutrition. Okay, so yeah, again, it's not about one decision or one day. It's about the whole picture, and not every day is going to be, perfect, and it doesn't need to be. We don't want to let perfect get in the way of good. All right, so when we think about nutrition and cancer, we really separate it into two time periods. There's nutrition for cancer prevention, whether that's a new or a recurrence of cancer. And that's all about, phytochemicals, the natural cancer fighters in food, trying to get as many plants as possible that contain those phytochemicals. So that's when we're thinking about fruits, vegetables, herbs, teas, spices, grains, avoiding alcohol, not taking excessive animal products, that sort of thing. But then we've got nutrition for cancer treatment. And, during cancer treatment, if you're able to do all those things, great, that's fantastic. But if you're not, it's the first thing I want you to throw out the window. These are the things that I want you to focus on when you're going through cancer treatment. Okay, so the first one is maintaining your weight. Now we're going to talk about this more on the next slide. Don't turn just yet. But this is really important, and we'll talk more about why. The second thing is we want you to keep your symptoms down, okay? When you're going through cancer treatment, things tend to snowball quickly. What can start out a small problem can turn into a big problem if we don't get control of it. So if we've got a little bit of nausea, that's okay if we can control it. But if we can't, it can turn into dehydration, it can turn into vomiting, it can turn into weight loss, and then the problems just get bigger and bigger, okay? So we want to try to keep our symptoms down as much as possible. Then we care about protein and hydration. So protein is super important when we're going through cancer treatment. We have all of our normal protein needs. And then on top of that, we have all the cancer cell death, all the healthy cell growth, and all of that requires protein. Okay. So super important to make sure we're getting, over and above our normal protein intake. And then on top of that, we also need to be very well hydrated. Every cellular reaction that happens in the body requires fluid, and we want a lot of reactions to happen, right? So we need to be well hydrated, which is more than most people think. And any liquid that has caffeine doesn't count towards that number. So and these are all, if you're looking for your individual numbers, which, who wouldn't be, that is all information a dietitian can tell you if you schedule an appointment with them. So, and that is something that is always available to you at Stanford, just by asking your oncologist. Okay, so this is why weight maintenance is so important. Okay, we know, top line, we know from the research that if you maintain your weight during treatment, the treatment tends to work better. Okay. Better outcomes, less symptoms, less side effects, just better overall, okay? But if you do start to lose weight, become malnourished, which could end up being life-threatening. You can lose muscle, which makes you feel really weak, which is why that protein is so important. And they may, if you lose too much, they may have to change your dosage, or those doses might start hitting you harder because you've lost weight. And so just a lot of complications come from weight loss. So, I know it's kind of a stereotypical thing that people think of when they're going through cancer treatment, but we really want to avoid it if at all possible. So how to eat during treatment? Like I said, if you're able to do the plants and all that, that's fantastic. If not, the worst thing that you can do is not eat. Okay. Nausea develops when you're hungry. All right. So if you're not eating, you're more likely to get nauseous. You're more likely to have acid reflux because that acid, that stomach acid, has nothing to chew on. So it's going to start to chew on you. Okay. You're more likely to have increased constipation. Just the problems start to multiply if you stop eating. If you're not taking your protein, you're going to start to feel really weak and tired. Okay. So you should eat whatever you can, whatever you like, whatever you can tolerate that day. And some days maybe that's a salad. Some days maybe that's a McDonald's burger, and that's what I want you to eat. Okay. So we want to be eating regularly throughout the day. So we say every 2 to 3 hours. So for most people, that looks like breakfast, a morning snack, lunch, an afternoon snack, dinner, and an evening snack. Every time you eat, you want to make sure there's some protein in there. Okay. So never just fruit, never just toast, always fruit plus cottage cheese, toast plus peanut butter, protein every time. We want to not be hungry. If we're having protein, we're going to be full. When you hear this idea of like crackers and nausea, that's really more for if you're actively throwing up. If you're actively throwing up, we want to take the crackers so we don't throw up bile because that's very uncomfortable. But if we're eating to prevent nausea, we want to be taking protein. Okay. Then there's concentrated drinks. So we'll talk more about this in a second, but a concentrated drink is any drink that has fat and protein. So this could be a smoothie, this could be a milkshake, a thick soup. This could also be a nutritional drink. Okay. The trick with the concentrated drinks, you don't want to sit there and drink the whole drink in just a couple of minutes. It can make you very full, bloated, uncomfortable. It can give you diarrhea. Or it can just make you so full that you don't want to eat your meals and snacks, and then it defeats the purpose, okay? So we take those types of drinks like a medication, and you take medication in doses. So we take 2 ounces per hour. It should take you 4 hours to get through an 8-ounce drink, okay? All right. Again, you want to plan ahead. You never want to have to look for a snack. If you have to look for it, you're already behind the 8 ball. So if we're going to Stanford and we've got a long day of appointments, we've got a bag of sandwiches and drinks and snacks. I don't care if you're in the meeting with the president of Stanford. If it's time for you to eat, you pull out your snack and you start snacking. Okay. You keep them next to your bed, next to your chair, next to the couch in the living room. You want to be a little pack rat with the snacks. Okay. Again, protein every time. This is sort of the basics of what to eat. So remember, food is only made of 3 things. So carbs, AKA sugar, fat, and protein. All right. So if it's not sugar and it's not fat and it's not protein, it's only one of those 3 things, right? Then for fluids, we have concentrated, the fat and protein. So again, that's your smoothies, milkshakes, thick soups, nutritional drinks. Then we have calorie-containing fluids. So that's any fluid that has calories but no fat and protein. So think about like juice, you put milk in that category, bone broth, things like that. And then we have electrolyte drinks. Okay. You want to take electrolytes if you're not getting enough fluid that day, or if you have vomiting, diarrhea, constipation. Okay. So this is, the plate. If you've ever seen this before, you divide it in half. On the left side, we want to do non-starchy vegetables. Starchy vegetables being like potatoes, not grains, but that would go in the category of grains. Potatoes, corn, that sort of thing. So they've got it split with fruits and vegetables, but any sort of non-starchy produce. And then we've got grains, of course, bread, rice, pasta, proteins. Ideally, we would be doing plant-based proteins, but certainly animal-based is fine. All right, so again, these are the food groups where ideally in a perfect world, again, we don't live in a perfect world, but we'd be doing complex carbs. So these are the carbs that have more fiber in them. So quinoa, brown rice, sweet potatoes, lean proteins. So they've got some animal sources there as well as some plant sources. Plant-based fats, again, if we're struggling with our weight, I don't care about this, but in an ideal world, we would be doing nuts, nut butters, olives, olive oil, avocado. As if you've ever heard the term eat the rainbow, it's the idea that the different colors of foods, fruits and vegetables, represent the different phytochemicals. So the more phytochemicals you're getting, the more different type of cancer fighting varieties you're getting. So the idea of eating the rainbow is to try to get as many different phytochemicals as possible. Okay, so I just got some recipes here. We're not breaking the mold with any of these. So we've got breakfasts here, lunches. These are snacks. So you'll see with all the snacks, it'll always be something plus a protein, okay? So again, we have so many recipe sheets and snack idea handouts. And if you want any of that, we can definitely provide that. I would also point you to eatingwell.com. They have some really great resources. You can look it up by disease state, by age, by, assembly only, cooking for one, a million different things. So that's eatingwell.com. Here's a list of potential side effects, and I only provide this to let you know that the types of things that might get between you and eating. Okay, I prescribe to really going into treatment with an open mindset. You don't want to necessarily think that any of these things definitely will happen, but it's good to be aware and just kind of take things as they come. So you may have more of an appetite, less of an appetite. You may have changes in taste. You might have, dry mouth. Along with that can come mouth and throat sores. It might become difficult to swallow. Acid reflux, heartburn, nausea is a big one. Ideally, would not lead to vomiting, but again, there's that as well. Cramping, bloating, abdominal pain, and then of course bowel movements is always a big one. Constipation, diarrhea. Again, these are things that might be getting in between you and food. So a lot of the times, if we are adding other barriers between us and food, that's going to make it less likely that we get to the food. So when we're really struggling with these types of things, we want to, let go of any sort of other barriers and try to get to the food as much as we can. Okay. Again, our goals being maintaining our weight, getting our protein, getting our fluid, and keeping our symptoms down. If you're able to do that, doesn't matter what you're eating. Okay, so this is an important slide. So, I always say I want to take out a skywriter that says sugar does not feed cancer. A lot of the time, cancer will be diagnosed by an unexplained weight loss. So let's say you're down 20 pounds and then you hear the idea that sugar feeds cancer. And so you cut all sugar. Remember, food's only three things. So sugar, protein, and fat. So if you're cutting sugar, you're cutting a lot of things in there. So if interested, I want to be aware of time, but I certainly can go into more detail about, how this actually works. But sugar does not feed cancer, and it's not anything that you need to be limiting, before, during, or after your cancer treatment, outside of just the normal, not wanting to have a 4-year-old's diet sort of situation. Certain foods or supplements can cure cancer. If there was a food or a supplement that could cure cancer, you would know about it. We're always finding, they're coming out every day with this new superfood or that new superfood. And, any one food, it's interesting to learn about the different benefits of these foods, but you cannot exist on one food alone. You can't exist on blueberries for your entire life or whatever the sea moss or whatever it is. It's much more important to look at your diet in a whole. We never want to look at one individual food, just like we don't want to look at one individual day. It's about the whole story that we're telling, okay? Organic foods are cancer proof. Certainly less pesticides is less pesticides, but there's actually no significant difference in the nutritional value in a organic fruit and vegetable versus a conventional fruit and vegetable. And overall, the benefits of taking more fruits and vegetables, regardless of their status, is great. It is more important than taking organic. Certainly, if you're able to, and that that provides a sense of quality of life and well-being, that's fantastic. But if it's a source of stress or financial burden, it's not necessary. It's more important for you just to get the fruits and vegetables. And then again, you must eat healthy all the time if you have cancer. As I said in the beginning, food is way more than just nutrition. There wasn't one reason why any person develops cancer. It's a whole mosaic of reasons together. And if you put that sort of stress on yourself, that if you have cake at the birthday party, you're going to be giving yourself cancer or making your cancer worse, that's a huge impediment to your quality of life. So, like I said, when you're going through cancer treatment, you have other goals outside of, fruits and vegetable and plant consumption. And then even when you're after treatment and throughout treatment, we're always concerned with our quality of life overall, because, why are we doing this, right? We're doing this for the joy of life, just to kind of go back to what the first panelists were talking about. Why are we doing this? Why are we taking the time, the energy, all of this? To do these treatments is to make sure we're living the best life possible. And I think for most people that does include some ice cream and champagne on New Year's and all that sorts of things. So again, just to kind of sum up, you want to be eating early and often. Okay, you want to be maintaining your weight. You want to be getting enough protein. You want to be very proactive with those side effects, and you want to be staying hydrated. Like I said, if we want to go more into the sugar feeds cancer, we definitely can. But I'll give it back to you, Dr. Sibley, just to be aware of time.
Fantastic, Kate. That was wonderful. I learned a lot. I have a question for you, though, to address our audience. When people are meeting with nutritionists, a lot of things invariably come up. What are 2 to 3 things that they should remember to ask the nutritionist from your standpoint?
Well, certainly you want to know, I don't really believe in calories per se. I think your energy is better spent on protein and fluid. So if you know how much protein and fluid you're supposed to get every day, you're probably going to be getting the calories that you need. Certainly, if you're having any symptoms, you want to know all the things that you can do to manage those symptoms, so that you can maintain your weight and keep your muscle strength and your energy and all of that. And then I would say, if there's anything that you have been told, or that you've read, those are the things that you really want to bring up to your dietitian, because, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and, you might not even be thinking about it directly. But if it's in the back of your mind, just to beat a dead horse, that sugar feeds cancer, and that's how you're sort of, making a lot of decisions, and you're not really thinking about it, those are the things that you really want to flesh out.
That is excellent. And that is one of my pet peeves, the sugar feeding cancer. So I really appreciate you bringing attention to that. Thank you. And I'd like to move on. We will have an opportunity in a few minutes now, actually, to ask all of our panelists some questions. But I want to answer a couple of questions in the Q&A. Is weight loss a symptom of cancer progressing? It can be. It may also be a side effect of chemo and not wanting to eat. So that is a very individual question, and there is not really a correct answer to give in a space like this. That really needs to be addressed on a one-on-one basis. And the next comment is, this is good. I needed the information previously. I agree. A lot of us are working on programs like this and other media to provide this information. I'm glad it's been helpful. I think it really needs to be more widely available. I'm glad it was a benefit to you. Thank you. Now, I'd like to open up the audience for questions and answers. Linda, do you have any would you like to read the questions and provide us with resources?
We do have about 12 slides that talk very specifically about resources in the community. And instead of reading you those slides, we're going to go ahead and just email you the entire slide deck. So I know we did get a very specific question about Stanford's caregiver program, and there are 3 slides in there about how to reach out, how to get a hold of them, and get involved.
If we can flip through some of those, I think it would be good to see.
This is a description of the caregiver program posted at through Stanford. There's all the contact information. We've included a lot. You'll see, just like this webinar, all of our webinars are now posted online. So after we do them, we can share them to you guys. That would be this slide here, all of our different support groups. We have different resources in the community. And again, specific caregiver resources. And I will go ahead and add the wonderful links that Antoinette gave us, so we can
thank you,
put that in there as well. So it's all in one place for I guess I did not get the caregiver information until my husband had been at the hospital for 4 weeks. So I believe Dr. Sibley spoke that part of these education programs that we're doing, we're more broadly working with our teams as the Cancer Center grows to provide these wonderful services and make them more widely known. So we hope you will help be voices for us.
I have a question for Kate.
Yes, great.
I think one of the challenges as a caregiver, I certainly felt this way, was that, that you get a lot of advice for what the patient should do, but how to incorporate that into your meal planning and family. Because I think caregivers often end up, anybody who's been a parent, you eat the scraps that the kid didn't eat, and it's a terrible habit. And I think that's common. So some advice on how you can incorporate some of these ideas into a family situation.
Into a family situation. Well, I mean, I guess that it depends on what the patient needs at the time, right? So if I know that one thing that we've done with patients in the past, if they're really struggling to keep on weight, is we try to make eating very social. So I've had patients where it's every, Friday afternoon, they go out with the grandkids and they all get milkshakes. And so it's milkshake time. So it's a more social thing. We're always going to eat more if it's social. So if you've got someone who's trying to put on weight, then making it social, making it happy, family favorites, things that you had as a kid, all of that, bringing the happy memories into things, can really be helpful. I would say also, as a caregiver, I would also emphasize protein. I know I'm a broken wheel with that, but, most people don't get enough protein. And if you're, in the energy, like you said, you can be really put on the back burner. You might be making sure they're eating, but you might not be making sure you're eating. So that pack rat method of, bars and drinks and having snacks in the car and by your bed and, just everywhere, especially when you're going to treatment days, because that's, I think, where a lot of people will say, oh, I didn't eat for 8 hours because I had a scan in the morning and then we got stuck in traffic and then, just things sort of happen. So you want to be sort of preparing ahead. If it's a texture thing where they need they need purees, or they need increased liquids. Again, trying to like make it something that everybody is doing. This is just, we're having more soups and stews these days. So you don't want to like other the patient. You don't want it to be like they're off on their separate thing. I think when they, if you're doing like nutritional drinks, everybody can try one and see, talk about what's your favorites. Like, we just want to make sure that we're embracing, past, present, future, all of the different iterations of them and the family. And this is just another sort of step and another sort of stage. Just like how they had baby food at one point, they probably won't still have baby food. But at the time, I bet you tried the baby food and you were like, oh, this is pretty good, so just trying to, sickness is a part of life, right? And the more that we can make people feel accepted and comforted, I mean, that's the whole thing of being a caregiver, right? We're comforting people. Like, the more we can make people feel accepted, I think is going to be great.
Very good.
May I add something about caregiving?
Absolutely.
Caregivers, do not let your patient abuse you. Don't let them be nasty. Don't be nasty to your doctors. You need all of these people. And if you are, ask for forgiveness. Say you're sorry.
That shouldn't be just a part of the process. Thank you, Sarah. I mean, we understand when people get that way, but it does make it harder for everybody.
I walked every day into the care facility where my mother was, and I started with staff. Thank you. How are you today? I learned a lot because I was amazed at how many people never asked them how they were.
You had a great point, Bernadette, when the doctor told you to complain about everything, because it really is the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So if you are concerned about that, tell everybody, tell the nurse in the infusion center, tell your doctor, tell the PA, tell the more people who know what's going on with you, the more collaborative they're going to be.
Sometimes people dismiss women, right? So it's very important, especially for women patients.
I think, I'm a believer you can say anything. It just matters how you say it. So it was always complain about everything and do it nicely. So
I'm glad this has been helpful and informative. And this is something that we feel, all of us on the panel feel very passionate about. And I will say it's something that is a particular interest of ours. That relates to why you may not have seen it in other areas. We have a very committed group at Stanford whose interest is patient education, practical patient education, and providing this information and getting it out there, because we realize in clinician visits, the focus is often about the cancer, about the treatment, but these other things, in my opinion, and I think backed by science, are as important, to have a quality experience, to have the best experience possible. So I'm glad this has been helpful, and I hope that other people have found it helpful as well. I have a survey that I have. We have the QR code on the screen, and then we have the link in the chat.
I just want to say thank you for including me and everyone else. It's always a great experience.
Thank you all for your time and expertise. This has been wonderful, absolutely wonderful and informative.
Yeah, I learned a lot.
Yeah, I did too.
Thank you so much to our speakers. And just as a reminder to our guests, thank you to our guests.
Yes.
Give me about 2 days, but I will use the email that you registered with, and you will receive all of the slides with hyperlinks and all this great information, because I know I've kind of already forgotten stuff at the beginning. So it's great to have it in your hands afterwards. But we're so glad you could join us. And please do fill out the survey. This is how we can make these better and more what you want if you let us know. Thank you, Dr. Sibley.
Have a wonderful evening and be safe if you're traveling.